I'd like to call our meeting to order. The Texas Government Code permits this Board of Trustees to meet in a closed executive session for the following reasons, among others. To consult with the college district's attorneys on matters deemed privileged by the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct or Government Code 551.071. To deliberate regarding real property under 551.072, a prospective gift under 551.073, certain personnel matters under 551.074, security devices or security audits under 551.076, and economic development negotiations under 551.087. If the board meets in closed session, we will announce the particular section under which we will be doing so prior to initiating the closed portion of the meeting. Our first item of business will be the invocation and pledge to the American and Texas flags. You may stay seated for just a moment. Our invocation will be led today by Sarah Butler. Please come up. Sarah is from Belleville, just down the road, and is currently a sophomore at Blinn College. She is studying to obtain an associate science degree in the field of education. After graduating from Blinn, Sarah will transfer to the University of Mary Hardin-Baylor, where she will continue her education with hopes of becoming a certified elementary school teacher. And we also have, for our pledges today, Blinn Lusk. Blinn Lusk is a sophomore at Blinn College and is working towards a bachelor's degree in communications with a marketing emphasis. After graduation this spring, Blinn will be taking his studies further at Texas A&M University. Blinn is a proud Blinn Chamber Choir and Concert Choir member, having developed a passion for vocal performance. He's excited to try out for the Texas A&M's new choir program. Apart from academics and music, Blinn is a dedicated ranch hand on his uncle's ranch in Chapel Hill, assisting with daily tasks and in the upkeep of their extensive garden. He appreciates the exposure and support provided by Blinn College and the choir programs that have greatly contributed to his personal and professional growth. I appreciate you both being here, and I'm going to interject. Y'all have a concert this week.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, please tell us when.
October 23rd at the O'Donnell Center.
And the
7
time?
o'clock.
7 o'clock.
This Thursday.
And if y'all were at the Hall of Honor, they did a beautiful job. I would encourage you to go if you're available. Many of us will be in New Orleans for a conference, so I'm sad that we're going to miss that. So, Sarah, we'll start with you.
Please pray with me. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing everyone to gather here today. We pray that you will be with us during this meeting and that you will give us guidance and wisdom we need. Let all the conversations be meaningful and pleasing to you, Father. Give us your grace and discernment as we make decisions that will affect the students, staff, faculty, and everyone involved at Blinn College. Please let us remember that everything that's said and all that we accomplish here today is for your glory and honor. In your Son's holy name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, indivisible.
Thank you both. Good luck this week.
Thank you.
Item 3 on the agenda is public comment. We have 3 people who have signed up. The first is Ken Williams with the Timber Oak HOA. There will be a time limit of 3 minutes per speaker. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to be able to speak on behalf of the Timber Oak subdivision and to share with you our concerns regarding the proposed sports complex and the potential impact that it may have on our quiet community. After nearly a year of searching, my wife and I chose the Timber Oak subdivision as a place to build our home because we believed that it would be peaceful and safe environment for which we would retire. We moved here from Humble, the Tascasita area near Houston, hoping to escape noise, congestion, and the constant traffic. While I know that many of you have already heard these concerns, I would like to take a few moments and reiterate some of them. The increased traffic on Timber Oaks Crossing, safety risks for our neighborhood children, restricted access to emergency vehicles, additional traffic from outside entities, stadium lights and nighttime illumination, noise pollution from the events as well as also the crowds, environmental concerns as far as flooding and the drainage, negative effects that it may have on our property values as well as the potential effects when it comes to selling those homes in the future. Our community is deeply concerned about how the proposed sports complex may affect our neighborhood. 3 minutes at a public meeting is not enough time in order for us to express our full concerns and the scope of what is going on. We respect that your discussions regarding the sports complex are private and understand the sensitivity of your deliberation. We respectfully ask that you invite one member of the Timber Oaks Homeowners Association Board to attend a closed meeting and allow them to share the concerns in greater depth. I do ask this one thing of each of you as the board members. I ask for you to take a few moments and consider the impact that this could have on you if you were to consider buying or building a home in our subdivision, knowing that there was going to be a large sports assembly that would be built right in your backyard. We're not opposed to progress or recreation development. We simply ask for safety, peace, and property values to be considered as you are also looking into the deliberation of what is happening in our Timber Oaks subdivision. Thank you so much for your time.
Our second speaker is Danielle Smith.
Good morning, Board. 50. That is the number of cars in the Timber Oaks neighborhood. 75, the number of abiding Word Church parishioners. 248, the number of Blinn athletes and staff who will utilize the planned athletic complex. I tracked all Blinn games and practices, dates and times for 2025 utilizing your August board workshop details. Several Blinn teams are planned to use the athletic complex and fields, funneling them into one area of 52 acres. Consistently, Blinn's planned 115 parking spaces for this area would be overwhelmed by having all teams, games, and practices in that one area. Vehicles would have no option but to use Oak Tree Crossing for parking, and oddly enough, it is Blinn's only proposed main way in and out of your athletic complex. I've also layered in events on the church and high traffic times observed in Timber Oaks. And Blinn games and practices often occur at the same time as other events in our neighborhood and at the church. This calendar doesn't account for the planned increase in intramurals, nor does it account for the leasing out of your complex. It doesn't show the charter buses that will further congest traffic. It doesn't show the non-athletes who would attend games and practices, and it doesn't account for the Timber Oaks residents who go to and from their homes every day. Imagine if it showed all of that plus your planned practices and games. With the current proposal, Oak Tree Crossing will become a bottleneck, and that is a fact. What would the city of Brenham say in having to address this problem created? I polled 25 current and former Blinn students asking if each had the option of walking or driving to a Blinn practice or game given a reasonable distance, and every single one said they would prefer to drive. Providing sidewalks in Texas heat means nothing if you didn't account for what students would actually do. The proposal assumes students will walk, assumes games and practices won't happen at the same time, assumes there is no emergency in which everyone would need to evacuate the area, assumes Timber Oaks residents don't traverse in and out of their neighborhood, and assumes no Blinn faculty and student growth. This board, the chancellor, and the athletic department will all change over time. Where is the plan for the future generation of Bucks? The solution? Use Sager Street. Work with the city to extend Sager Street to Blinn's athletic complex and fields. Sager Street has 2 lanes going to and from the dedicated turn-in lane onto Old Mill Creek Road. Sager Street provides for a 4-way stop in all directions. Oak Tree Crossing has 1 way in and 1 way out with no turning lanes. Oak Tree Crossing has no 4-way stop and yields to Old Mill Creek traffic as a right-of-way. Oak Tree Crossing is not your answer. It will become the bottleneck. Sager Street is Blinn's only best solution. Thank you.
Our third speaker is John Powell.
Morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. You probably recognise me from August 19th, or maybe not, but I'm bringing up the safety issues again and the parking issues on the Oak Tree Crossing. At that time, I mentioned that students were parking along Oak Tree Crossing on the Brower Hill, which is a blind spot down to Old Mill Creek. And I raised that issue because there's a danger to the people coming out of the facility at William Rankin Agricultural Centre, and also the issue of parking along that street. When you've got approximately 140 spaces inside the agricultural centre, and there's only 6 visitor parking spaces which are in front of the admin building. So you've got 130 plus spaces, and my request the last time was whether or not you could allocate some of those spaces that are inside, in front of the William Rankin workshops and classrooms for temporary students, or students that come in that don't have permits, because that's the issue, is the permits, I think. So the request is those which are immediately in front of the agricultural workshops and the classrooms, and there's about 30 immediately in front of that building, whether 8 of them or whatever, could be allocated for temporary parking, student parking, or something for the visitor, for the people that come in occasionally. They don't come every day. They come in occasionally, so they can park their vehicles in your facility and not on Oak Tree Crossing. It's a blind drop from Oak Tree Crossing down to Old Mill Creek. So that is, you know, to me is a serious issue. The other thing I've noticed in the last couple of weeks is Blinn College have cleared all that area down by South Sager Street at the bottom there where it ends, straight into the field, or not into the field, but the access that was there with the gates that runs directly into the, I can't remember the name of the complex at the back anyway. And that road runs straight in there. You can stand at the bottom of South Sager Street, look straight in, and you can see exactly what the access could be if you either pursued the original location or even to go in that way and stay off Oak Tree Crossing. The bottom line is we don't want traffic, we don't want construction traffic, we don't want parking on Oak Tree Crossing. It's going to cause more issues than we've got now. We've got enough issues. So that's basically what a follow-up on the letter that I gave on August the 19th. So I've got a few pictures which I'm going to leave with Leighton, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move to item number 4, the reports, and we'll begin with Dr. Hensley's Chancellor's Administrative Report.
Thank you, Chair Binky, and good morning, everyone. Trustees, last month, Blinn celebrated another outstanding achievement by our esports program as we honored our 2023 NJCAA Call of Duty National Champions with a ring ceremony. This national title represents Blinn's second national title since the esports program was established in fall of 2020. That's pretty amazing. More recently, our team captured the National Esports Collegiate Conference Legends Division Championship during the spring of 2024. At this time, I'd like to share a brief video highlighting this achievement.
This achievement would not have been made possible without the incredible support from everybody in this entire college. This Call of Duty team in particular really showed what it means to overcome adversity. They dealt with a ton of pressure, long hours of practice, tough losses, roster changes, some very frustrating defeats throughout the semester, and every single time y'all came back stronger. Y'all's teamwork, your drive to improve, your belief in one another as teammates and players, it really carried you all the way to the national title. Y'all have set a new standard for what it means to be a player here at Blinn Esports.
I've been a part of several collegiate programs now, and I've never come into a place where esports is just so celebrated and supported across campus, and I know that starts at the very top with you, so thank you for the resources. The team that we beat in the finals, Central Community College, we actually played them several times during the semester, and I think we won maybe one map the entire semester. Not just a match, but a singular map. We actually played the first 2 games, and we won them both, and then we were told we needed to restart the entire series. I think a lot of teams, a lot of players would have crumbled under that, but they were able to refocus, get right back to work, and they ended up taking the series 3-1. So that resilience just showed until the very end of the season.
I'm so proud of our esports program. You know, they brought in a new kind of flavor into our campuses, and it's been very exciting to have them. And I see our wonderful executive dean for the Waller campus, Max Hibbs. Max, once you stand, thank you so very much. Max has been the champion and the starter and the coach and the everything for esports since we began it in 2020. Congratulations for all the great work and the launch to 2 national championships in so short a period of time. Thank you so very much. Well, I have more good news to talk about today, trustees. I'd like to share with you that we recently opened a new food trailer at the Rellis campus. It is operated by Blinn's Food Services Department. This trailer expands on-site dining options for our students, faculty, and staff, and enhances the overall campus experience. When I say expands, I really mean kind of started and initiated it and expanded it, because we had very little food options at the Rellis campus, as you might recall. It's the kind that is a vending machine, more or less. And so this is an actual kitchen inside the food trailer. It's really exciting. The trailer is located directly behind our Rellis Administration Building, and it's open Monday through Thursdays. We had it open on Fridays, but most of our students aren't taking a lot of classes on Fridays, so we weren't quite getting enough business. It serves a rotating daily lunch special. I'm going to tell you about that in just a second. As well, it has a variety of tacos and breakfast lunch items, including hamburgers and chicken tenders and pizza. And this new addition has been well received by the ongoing community and reflects our ongoing campus efforts to improve student services and campus amenities. Now, what I wanted to tell you in more detail is this. When I talked about the rotating menu, there was some discussion as to whether we would actually have a menu item each day there rather than just the tacos and the hamburgers, and we decided that we would. Well, that has been a hit. So I just want to tell you, if your schedule allows, I suggest you go on Thursdays, because Thursday is Chicken Fried Steak Day. And I was out there recently on a Thursday, and I came into the parking lot, and the first faculty member that I met after I opened my car door said, "Today's Thursday. Do you know what Thursday means?" And I said, "Tomorrow's Friday?" And I said, "No, it means Chicken Fried Steak Day." So I walked onto the parking lot towards the building, and one of our police officers came to me, up to me, and they said, "Dr. Hensley, hi, good to see you. Did you know that today is Chicken Fried Steak Day?" I said, "I think I just heard that." So I walked up to the trailer, and before I got there, the lady who was working there came to me, Dr. Hensley, today is Chicken Fried Steak Day. Would you like some?" And of course, now the aroma is hitting too, and I can smell chicken fried steak with cream gravy all the way out from the parking lot. So I said, "No, I'm going to a meeting, but I'll come back later. Maybe I'll look at it at that time." So I'll go in the back door, and I'm in under the stairwell, and I meet a student who says to me, "Hi." And I said, are you headed somewhere? And they said, "Yes, today's Thursday, and it's Chicken Fried Steak Day." Going out to the food trailer. So I went into the building, and I went up the elevator to the 3rd floor, and I walk into Chris Marr's administrative suite where I have an office there, and the admin was there eating at her desk. Do you have any question about what she was eating? Chicken fried steak. So I don't know what Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday are, but Thursday is a winner, I can tell you all that. So lots of suggestions and lots of good kudos to Joe Schultz and Dr. Burton, if you'll share our appreciation with that. And I'm hearing that we're getting a lot of students from the A&M Academic Complex buildings coming over because, you know, that smell does waft right across that little corner over there. And then we're getting some interest from some of the state agencies that are there too. So we do take cash and we do take credit card, and we do welcome anyone who would like to come. All right. Well, let's talk about the Waller campus for just a moment. We continue to make excellent progress on the development of our new Waller campus. Our architect and construction manager at risk are working collaboratively through the design and the pricing phases, and the traffic impact analysis has been submitted to the Texas Department of Transportation for their review. This facility, trustees, remains on schedule to open for the fall of 2027 semester. And then over to the Waller Workforce and Technical Education Complex. There, the landlord has broken ground and has begun installing utilities. Blinn's Facilities Department has reviewed finished selections with the landlord and has met with internal stakeholders to discuss upcoming soft cost purchases and lead times. This project, too, trustees, is scheduled for completion in the summer, in May of 2026, and we do have a plan for classes to start next summer there. And then over to the central plant on the Brenham campus. Excavation around the central plant has been completed to identify and uncover existing utilities in preparation for planned modifications. All long lead materials have been released, and the submittal process for the brick screen wall is nearing completion. The new chillers are expected to arrive next month, and this project remains on track for completion in September 2026. And one final remark, I know a number of trustees are going to New Orleans later today or tomorrow. Travel safely. We'll see you all there. For the general public, we do have 5 trustees who will be presenting at the National ACCT Conference, and I'm so proud that they're able to do this wonderful opportunity in representing Blinn, and I'll see many of you there. And with that, Trustee Minky, this concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Hensley. Item B under reports is the presentation of financial statement package for the period ending September 30th, 2025. Dr. Burton, thank you.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, trustees. Good morning, Dr. Hensley. This is the first month of fiscal year 2025, or 8% of the fiscal year. During this presentation, we'll discuss unrestricted cash and cash equivalents, revenues, expenditures, financial results, and then observations. Looking at our cash and cash equivalents, we had $83 million, 42.5 was operating reserve. And then further going into the breakdown of this, we had deferred projects of $5.5 million, deferred maintenance. And then we had amounts for the Brenham Chiller, the sports complex, and then the Waller academic building. So we've set aside $11.7 million. So available for new projects is $23.2 million. Looking at our cash receipts, we've got $16 million from financial aid, $7.5 from students, and then we issued refunds for a plus of $14 million. We had a state appropriations of $1.5 million. Keep in mind that $1.5 million includes the amount for the Waller workforce project. We had interest of $325,000 for a total of $1.9 million. Our expenditures were payroll, accounts payable, and amounts that we owed to Servitas as a pass-through for $20 million. Looking, it's a little bit of, let me go back. Looking at the total of the three, we have cash from students, $14 million again, 1.9. That gives us 4.3 used in operating. We had a decrease in the bank and decrease in the cash. An element of this was we had to pay our bond, make a bond payment this month. Looking at our revenues, our state appropriations were 4.5 million compared to 2.4 last year. But keep in mind, a majority of that was the amount for the Waller building. In addition, a point of emphasis here is that our auxiliary revenues were up $200,000 compared to last year. So this year compared to last year, we had 15.5 million. Last year, we had 13.3 million at this time. Looking at our operating revenues, our state appropriations were up as I've mentioned earlier. And then all the others were just about the same as to where they were, except for auxiliaries, which had a nice increase. Looking at a comparison of to prior years, again, the state appropriation sticks out pretty handsomely because of the additional Waller money. Our state appropriation, we're at 13% of our budget. Our tuition and fees, we're at 10% of our budget. And looking at our tuition, it was up by $9,000, or just about equal to where it was last year at this time. And again, looking at the 5-year trend. Going through with our actual versus budget on food service and housing, you can see that housing had a 25% increase this year compared to last year. Food service is up 13%. And so, Dr. McBride, you and your group, congratulations on that. Looking at the trends, housing is ticking up, as well as food service is trending up. Expenditures, we had a variance of a $900,000 increase over last year, and a lot of that is we paid some software contracts in September. And that's where you'll see that reflected in the institutional support and in the services graph. Looking at our financial results, we brought in $15.5 million compared to $12.9 expense. We're to the good by $2.5 million. Comparing this year to last year, we're up $1.2 million at this time. Observations, again, our cash is healthy. Our revenues are above budget, and compared to last year, our expenses are about where we expected them, and we're in good financial health. Any questions?
One question, Clint. Have we received our FAST money yet from the prior fiscal year?
I'm going to ask Ms. Ward to respond on that. Go ahead.
We received our money this month. We received almost $360,000.
Very good. That's about half of it. Is that correct on the?
We had already received fall last year.
Okay.
And so this was for spring.
Very good. Thank you. Good to know.
Thank you, Ms. Ward.
I have a question. Clint, I saw we're still showing that we're reserving $42.5 million, I think, for off of our operating budget.
Correct.
For expenses. Have we gotten away from the 5-month? Traditionally, this board is always going for a 5-month reserve, and I don't know that.
It is at 4 months, yes, sir.
4?
Yes, sir.
Was that an administrative decision to go down?
It's just where we are. We haven't adjusted that in over the budget. Just as the budget has come in over time.
Should we maybe consider going back to 5?
We could follow up on that and give you a response.
I just know that traditionally we've been at 5, and I was just surprised to see that we made that decision to go to
4, yes, sir.
Without any input from the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Burton.
Okay.
Excuse me. Our next presentation is an update on master plan projects. Dr. Burton, this is also yours.
Chair Binky, I'll start that one. Sorry, Clint, I jumped right in. We got to be quicker than that off the draw. Thank you, Chair Binky. Trustees, Chancellor. We've got an update for you, a broad update on master plan projects. We're going to have a couple different phases. So we're going to introduce the cadence and how this will go, and we'll kind of turn it over to everybody to do that. We are going to have the financial update from Dr. Burton first. We'll hear about some financial updates. Mark Feldake will then come up and do the facilities side of the updates, both on the sports complex and the Waller project. And then we're also really happy to have Stephen Adams and Paul here from SBSFI that's going to give us the financing update on the bonds. We'll talk a little bit more about that before Mr. Adams comes up and does the presentation. But that's where we're going to go, give you updates on all those projects from financial side, the facility side, and also the bonding side. And we'll hear some recommendations toward the end of the presentation on bonds and those sort of things. So, Mark, I'm going to toss it over to you. Thank you.
I believe Clint is next.
Oh, Clint's first. Okay,
Again, this is a recap of what we're going to have coming up, financial update, and again, this was Mr. Schubert covered. Looking at the financials, one of the things we wanted to do was compare where the Blinn's financials are on 2024, 2023, and 2014, and we picked those years because those are the most recent audited numbers. As you can see from the graph here, we had operating reserves of $42.5 million. We had deferred maintenance reserves of $9.6 million. And we had reserves set aside for projects, the Waller, Bryan, and Brenham, totaling $50 million. So we had $15 million available for new projects. Looking at the next 2023, you can see again, we had operating reserves, we had capital reserves, for projects, and then we had available funding for new buildings. Keep in mind, during this period, we closed out the Bryan Administration Building, and we purchased Waller land. Going to 2014, keeping in mind that if in 2014 we had 4.75 months in reserves and no available funding for any additional projects or additional R&R that were included in there. Looking at the financials, they're taking a comparison between 2024 and 2014. The long-term bonds did increase by $65 million, but our bond payment only increased by 19%. And that was due to 4 reasons. We got a better bond rating, some bonds matured, we had some bond refinancing, and we took advantage of record low rates. In addition, from this 16% or 19% increase in bond payments, our cash balance increased by 220%, or $82 million. Our capital balance increased by $143 million. And our total revenues, with the increase of the $660,000 bond payment, went up $45 million. All this while our bond payment to expense ratio went from 4% down to 3%. So this board, Dr. Hensley and this administration have been managing the finances of this college very prudently, and you can see over the last 10 years evidence of that. And now I'll pass it on to Mr. Feldhaig.
Thank you, Dr. Burton. Was this yours? Chair Benke, Dr. Hensley, members of the board, thank you very much. I'm here again to give you an update, current update on the sports complex project. As you saw earlier, we're going to do a brief recap of what we looked at in August and then get some new information to y'all as well as some next steps on both of these projects. So in regards to the sports complex, just kind of recap some of what we looked at. Here is an overview reminding us of where the sports complex is on campus. If I can get the cursor there, of course, this is the additional 24 acres we bought a couple years ago, our existing land, the 290 frontage with the car dealerships, Appleway is a public road. Of course, we have our friends here in the Homeowners Association with the public street, Oak Tree Crossing, and the Circle Drive here, our Rankin Ag Complex, the Ann Gardner Livestock Annex, Blinn College Park Apartments, the Sager Street, which extends between the apartments. We also have Blinn's extra parking here, Mill Creek Hall, Cruzy, the baseball field, as well as the band practice field and the intramurals. Of course, we know that we're moving intramurals out to the sports complex eventually. And then, of course, our land here for the sports complex. We'll look a little bit more at that. As we dive into that on the sports complex, a few highlights I want to hit on this. Per the master plan, we indicated access off of the public street, off of the Circle Drive. There was also an indication of access off of Appleway to the sports complex. So those are being looked at, of course, depending on how that lays out, or you know, the main access point is currently designed to come off of the Oak Tree Crossing roundabout. We're also looking at a back access in off of Apple Drive. As we build it, you know, the contractors may be using one side for construction. You can also see some of the contours here. That's something we're going to look at a little bit more as we talk about the costing. You can see the overhead power lines which encumber this site. We've had some discussions with the city about relocating those. You can see the existing detention pond that serves the ag complex. That's a dry pond. We're going to be looking to expand that as part of our project, get more detention in our area. There's also the floodway that we have to consider over here by the Higgins Branch Creek that we have to accommodate for, and we need to make sure that we plan around that in the overall master planning of this complex. I want to remind us of the discussions we've had with our athletics groups. We've had some very in-depth discussions with all of the athletic teams that are planned to be relocated here, whether that's football, men's and women's soccer, women's softball, the cross-country teams, the golf teams, as well as the trainers and the coaches to make sure that we can accommodate those, get the soccer teams and the softball teams back on campus so that they're not driving to Holt Park for practices and games. And try and give them a home on the Blinn campus that's comparable to the other sports. Also to mention the conversations we've had with our student life group and intramurals, which is going to impact the entire student population, giving intramurals a true home that they can use. You know, right now, intramurals really doesn't have anything they can do on campus in the evenings in the fall. They have to share the intramural field with band. And with the way that band practices, they really don't have an intramural field in the fall on this campus. They have to go off campus to do anything outside in the fall. Also, just remind y'all of our conversations we had about the traffic impact analysis. We're going to talk a little bit more about this later in some conversations we had with the city. But if you'll recall, we had Kim Lee Horn provide a traffic impact analysis. After some comments we received at the board meeting, they slightly updated that as we looked at parking and access and how many students would be using or how many cars would be using the drive off of Oak Tree Crossing versus coming off of the Apple Way access point. But we did look at that, and we have communicated that updated traffic analysis to the city, and there'll be more in this presentation as we talk about that. Reminding us also of the discussion about the thoroughfare plan. There's going to be more information I share later about the thoroughfare plan, but the city does have a thoroughfare plan that shows a future Sager Street extension that would go continue past the Blinn College Park Apartments. The original plan was in that floodway river bottom that we showed, and we'll see a little bit more on a plan I have later. Actually, the original plan was for that purple dash line to continue all the way straight down, tie into Farewell Street, and then tie into Prairie Lee. That plan changed a few years ago, and I'll update us there. The current city thoroughfare plan indicates it's turning and going out to the 290 frontage using Apple Drive. So we'll talk about that. I also want to remind us of the discussion we had with TxDOT and their plan changes to the Cloverleaf at 290 and 36, and how in their plan they're indicating a one-way frontage on this side, the Apple Drive, the auto dealer side of the road, that would be a northbound two-lane frontage. So if the thoroughfare plan were to come through and Apple Drive, or I'm sorry, 290 were to stay in this configuration that TxDOT is presenting, all traffic then off of Apple Drive would be funneled back up to Old Mill Creek. And then I just want to remind us of the presentation that Pfluger gave us on the design of the complex. So this is the complex as it currently stands in Pfluger's design. You can see the access is planned, a drive is planned off of the Oak Tree Crossing Circle, the roundabout, which in our traffic impact analysis handles the traffic very well. So our traffic would come in. This is indicating about 115 space parking lot. We're looking at expanding that parking lot, still trying to figure out the exact number of what that is, because we do have ample parking at the ag complex. There's other parking on campus that students could use and walk to the events. We're also looking at a proposed route to relocate those overhead power lines. We've had those conversations with the city. Again, this enlarged detention pond, again, that's a dry pond, not a wet pond. We're looking at the sizing of that. We have our football field. This is just practice, the practice football field with the running track. We have the competition soccer field, and then the competition softball field with our field house. Elevations on these are all fairly comparable. You know, with this being a hill, they're around 355 is the common elevation, which is similar to some of the other built facilities in that area. And then, of course, yes, ma'am?
Just before you, I thought you were about to switch to another screen.
No.
So I thought I want to ask you, since there's open space on this one, Sager, would that, if that ever happened, oh, yes. Can you show me where that would go on there, possibly? It had a loop around?
I've got a couple slides coming up that we
Okay.
can dive in on that a little bit
Okay.
more. There's the original plan slide, which is problematic. There's a couple concepts that are out there. And then there's more discussion that we can have on that.
Okay.
So
Thank
I'll
you.
get to that, I'm sorry. Of course, we also have our access drive that would allow for emergency vehicle access to come off of 290 and get to our sports complex. It would also allow, when we have a busy event, of course, we're accounting for a maximum 600 seats in the soccer complex and about 400 seats in the softball complex. If we had a heavily attended event, we would open that drive up and allow that to egress out onto Apple Drive. Also, just want to remind us of the facility that we're looking at. It's about 28,000 square feet. You can see all the areas here. We have a nice public lobby. We have the golf suite, the softball locker room, the men's and women's soccer locker rooms, the intramurals office, so that we will have a full-time intramurals person here, as well as storage. The public access concessions, the fields would be just to the plan south. We have public access restrooms, as well as the restrooms for any visitors in the building. Some meeting spaces for teams, or if we needed a public event there for maybe a heavily attended game. We have the coaches suite, we have equipment, laundry, the football coaches area, the football locker rooms, of course, training more centrally located, and then the cross-country locker rooms, as well as some visitor locker rooms and the referee changing rooms. And just to remind us of the rendering from our architects on that, this would be from the north, an aerial view from the north looking towards the south, and it just gives you a view of what that might look like. We also discussed a concept for a future development master plan for the area. These are just some elements that were discussed. Again, just to remind us, we have room for potentially a future expansion of the track to include field. We have the potential expansion of the facility if we were ever to build a weight room or add in any additional sports or any additional training area. There's room for additional intramural fields, tennis fields, pickleball courts, maybe an outbuilding for storage or restrooms on the south side, some additional parking. There would be room for a golf driving range. That's been something that's been brought up by our golf area, as well as a putting and chippy green, which was something indicated in the master plan, but not currently incorporated in our plans. And we're also looking at kind of a running walking trail that could be used by our students or residents, or even be used by our cross-country team for a practice area or even competitions. And that would, we are looking at the potential of bringing that walking trail, what that might mean to bring it back to campus and tie it in with the bridge and get us access over to some additional parking. Of course, we're also looking at reserving some space for additional pasture land for our ag department. We've talked with them and we've got information from them. We also presented kind of an after the fact in our last meeting. We talked about lighting. Our architects have done a preliminary study on lighting. So you can see that we are looking at some lights at the practice football field. That could be generally football right now is practicing in the days, but they could practice in the evenings. We may also have some intramural activities. Intramurals typically says they're done by about with their activities by 8 or 9 at night, just depending. And of course, that is not a competition level lighting, that's a lower level lighting. We'll talk a little bit more. You can see the distance those lights are from the back of the residential area. Then of course, as you get to the competition area, this would be where we would have higher level lighting. You can begin to see where the lighting is. Again, this is just kind of a schematic that the architects are showing. This lighting would be further away, almost 600 feet away for the soccer field and further away for the softball field. And then the architects have also looked at a study on sound. You know, sound is pointed away from the press box, So our sound in this area would be moving over towards campus, similar for the softball field over towards campus. And we are looking at providing a buffer between our area and the city's code. It requires a buffer yard between our type of development and a residential development. We're anticipating that would include some dense bushes as well as trees to help buffer between our development and the residential area, as well as a way of buffering for sound and some light. The ways that you can kind of help mitigate those is by providing distance, providing physical barriers between those, whether that's a building like you see here for the field house, or even the buffers with landscaping and vegetation. As far as lighting, we're very early in lighting. The architects, this is schematic design. We don't typically pick out the fixtures yet, but typically you order LED lights whenever you do this. So we're not quite there yet. But this just is for reference. Practice facilities usually have 20 to 30 foot candles. We're probably at about 60 or 70 foot candles in this room right now. That's what you need for reading. So just as a reference, competition fields need more, around 50 to 70 foot candles. And then these are just some of the benefits you get with modern LED lighting. This isn't the kind of lighting we have at Dreyer Field, which is a little older. This is newer lighting. So you can really focus those in. You can get glare shielding. There's dimming capabilities with those lights. There's better controls. And we'll also, when we do this, we'll run a photometric analysis, which means we'll have a specialty lighting engineer really look at this. And then also just to remind you the overall project scope. Just hit on this again. The scope, including the synthetic turf football field, the 8-lane running track, the soccer field, the competition softball field, the building, the parking, the unconditioned storage building. We are still at about $39.5 million. As we move forward, we will be looking at ways that we can value this and looking at options, and I'll bring some of that up shortly. And then, of course, our schedule, 25 to 28, that still is in play, although we need to talk about what the schedule is based on some other communications that have come up. The next part of this I want to talk about is the estimate evaluation. Clearly, we're over budget. Our original schematic design the conceptual estimate was about $29.5 million. And again, as I mentioned, whenever we started presenting these projects, that was a budget that was developed by reaching out to some of our industry partners and getting some numbers from them. It was a very early conceptual estimate, and we needed to master plan the facility as we got there. Unfortunately, that budget is not holding true, and we're at about $39.5 million right now. The big variances that we're seeing are a variance in site and parking. So I mentioned the hill is playing an impact, some other site factors are playing an impact. And also, the 8-lane track was not originally accounted for in the master plan. And so that's something that has come up, and we can look at that. But the track is coming in at a price of about $1.5 million. So there's the site and parking, there's the track. I also want to dive in a little bit more. With the site and parking being the biggest variance, we want to look at what is driving within that. So we've broken it down by percentage. We don't want to give estimate dollars just yet. That might skew bidding at this level, so we want to be very careful with the contractor's estimate, or with the CMAR's estimating numbers. But of the items that are kind of in the double-digit variance, concrete seems to be escalated at about 12% of that. Some of the variances that we could allocate that to is the city has asked for additional fire lanes to get access to some of the seating areas. That wasn't really anticipated by our designers early, and that got it added in late into the design, as well as adding that drive down to Apple. That really wasn't accounted for in the early conceptual estimate. Of course, earthwork is the big one. 45% of that $8 million is earthwork, and we're going to dig in a little bit more. We've done some deeper dive on earthwork by talking with some earthwork contractors, getting their opinions, just to double check on that. Exterior improvements is another factor, and looking at that, the big number that stands out in the CMAR's estimate is landscaping. I think that it's still very early, and there are some opportunities with landscaping to maybe see some value there as we refine the design. And then there's also the site utilities. That one's a little escalated over 10%. Some of the drive there may be the cost to relocate the overhead power lines. There is a cost that we're going to have to pay the CMAR to get those moved so that they're out of our way. As far as digging in on the earthwork, we talked a little bit about it, but I haven't really showed everyone the survey. So we had a surveyor come out and survey not only the new 24 acres that was purchased, but also the existing, roughly 27 acres that includes Ann Gardner. A lot of lines here, it's hard to read, but I want to point out a few things. Again, here's our Circle Drive at Oak Tree Crossing with our public access. That was actually platted by the previous owner as an access to get into the property at a later date whenever they changed their development here at the residential area. Here is our existing detention pond for the ag complex. This is just a natural drainage way. Right now it's heavily vegetated and we'll get that cleared out. Some fencing. This is that overhead power line. It's been there for a while, so we're going to have to relocate that. And we've been talking with the city. That's going to be part of our replat process. This is a fence and also the property boundary between the two properties. And then, of course, this is our original property that we owned, the Ann Gardner complex with its pasture. Ms. Ehlert, this is actually the original easement that was dedicated back in 1997. And you can see how that easement becomes very problematic going through the creek and the crossover. So that's something that we have to talk about, and it's something that is indicated on the thoroughfare plan. The other easement, and again, that was dedicated in 1997, and it did have a 25-year grandfather to it. So we'll talk about that, meaning that the city had 25 years to build that road. There's also an existing easement for the extension of Apple Way. And that is actually south of our property. That's not on our property. That's actually on the cemetery's property. A couple other small elements I'll bring to your attention. Some of these lines that just mean that there's some dense vegetation there. There's also, we've learned, and I somewhat speculate, but I've seen it in some pictures. You can see here, this is actually the edge of a hill. And I've been told by some of our Blinn staff that have been around for a while that this is an area that was used for spoils whenever some things were built there, meaning they brought spoil dirt, and even some construction debris might be buried there. So we maybe have some unforeseen conditions under the ground in that area to deal with. Now, talking about what the contractor did, our CMAR, whenever they looked at this, they did a pretty in-depth grading plan. They're trying to use what's called a balance site, which means you cut into a hill on one side and you fill on the other. So that plays an impact, and you can see how many grading lines. In fact, I missed something. I apologize. I'm going to jump back on this. All of these lines that make it muddy, these are contour lines. When these lines get more dense, closer together, there's a pretty steep slope in those areas. So we look for areas where the lines are further apart. Here is an area, here's an area, but a larger area is really where we're placing the building. These are very dense lines, meaning they're kind of sloping off towards the creek in that area. Again, with this area being the high point and this being the low point of the site. So the contractors and the architects took that into account, and when we were looking at the layout of the site, trying to get it closer together so we were moving less dirt, and then trying to put it in a place where there was less to move, the contractors did a good takeoff, trying to balance the site, and looked at this several different ways. Something that is new, that contractor estimate was done. They did their takeoffs back in June, and we've been working through that. We also performed a geotechnical study. We heard about that about a month ago. I believe there was some discussion about folks out there drilling. We drilled 3 boring holes just to get a preliminary investigation on the site. So we drilled a boring hole 1, 2, and 3. Of those 3 boring holes, they came back with, and I'll get into some of these terms, PVR, which means potential vertical rise, and a PI, which is a plasticity index. What you need to know about that is the lower the number, the better. And in fact, when we build buildings, we're always trying to get our PVR below a 1. That means that there's less likelihood of our slabs or our buildings moving around as soils expand and contract. but we didn't have those borings done. They didn't do those borings until August 25th, so our contractor didn't have that information. And we actually didn't get the report back on this until September 17th. And that's going to play a role in some of this conversation. But what we're seeing here is we actually have some fairly good soils. Whenever I compared this to even the soils report that we did at the Ann Gardner complex, this is much, much better than the soils we even had there. So taking all that information, we did reach out to a couple reputable commercial earthwork contractors. And we spoke with some high-level leadership for a couple of those, and they gave us some good feedback on this. Again, we didn't ask them to try and get in the middle of the bidding process, but we wanted their feedback. And a couple quotes they gave us, you can see there. The location orientation of the building and sports fields appears to be located in an ideal position on the overall parcel. Of course, they're accounting for grading, they're accounting for utility locations, access, things like that. They also said, you know, where you have it is best. We asked them to take a look and, you know, give us their feedback on what we let them know regarding the CMAR's earthwork estimates and what they would envision. And they said that the CMAR's schematic design estimate is conservative given the preliminary design and information. You know, we don't have a whole lot of information. The CMAR didn't have the soils report. They're making a lot of assumptions, and their assumptions were conservative, which is what we want at that point. They also said that the CMAR, as they get that final geotechnical report, they believe there is some room for improvement on this. So on that grading plan I showed you, that was just the surface dirt. The CMARs also need to dig out, and it was anticipated in the CMAR's estimate, they're going to have to dig down 3 or 4 feet under all the fields and the building to come back in with that select fill material. And that's to get the potential vertical rise, to get the right soil so that our fields don't move and cause us problems in the future. All of those were assumptions made by the CMAR, and as we get more into the design and more information on the geotechnical report, we'll be able to refine those and hopefully get better numbers. I think the earthwork contractors mentioned that they feel like we'll get better numbers as we get further into the design and further information. Now we'll talk a little bit about our communication and coordination with the city of Brenham. And some of this gets into the thoroughfare plan that we discussed, the TIA. And so first I want to give you some history. So we approached the board last fall, almost a year ago, to talk about this project. And shortly after the board let us move forward with that, I scheduled a meeting with the city. So in January of 25, we met with the city of Brenham's development department staff to do some initial discussions about this project. Let them know what we were planning to do, how it related to the master plan. Got a little bit of feedback from them. You know, we did start the conversation about the thoroughfare plan and the need to do a traffic impact analysis, and that we would be coming back to them whenever we had more information. After we selected the architects, the construction manager, and got a little bit further into design, we had the architects reach out to the city there at the end of June and had a phone call with the city. The city had a few concerns, so I called them back on July 3rd and had a conversation with them regarding the status of the TIA, you know, the number of occupants. So we've worked through that. On August 4th, we got Blinn's contingent of designers, our civil engineer, our architect, and we met with the city for a pre-development meeting. At that time, we presented to the city our preliminary traffic impact analysis as well as our schematic design. They had a large contingent there, including people out of the utilities department. The fire marshal was there. The development staff was there. They had folks from Parks and Recreation. They had you know, it was probably about 12 or 14 people in there from the city. So we had good feedback. And what we heard from them, some of the high-level things that they came out of that meeting, was that they needed to review the TIA plan prior to submission of a replat. They need us to replat because, as you can see, there's multiple pieces of property, and we have to replat to incorporate all those pieces of property together because we're building over some property lines, and we have to move that overhead line, which is platted. That is not designated by a separate instrument. They also mentioned that the thoroughfare plan amendment would need to go before the city council for approval. So that was something that they mentioned on the August 4th meeting. Of course, after that, we had the presentation to the board at the end of August. And coming out of that, we were requested to look at some changes regarding parking lot size. So we made some adjustments to the traffic impact analysis. But as we were doing that, the city sent us an email on September 10th letting us know that they had had a meeting with a city council subcommittee, which we have found out is their economic development subcommittee. And they talked about the update that we gave them at the pre-development meeting in August. And the direction that came out of that subcommittee was that they wanted to uphold the adopted thoroughfare plan, and that they wanted Blinn to build that Sager Street connection. So they wanted Blinn to take Sager Street and bring it down through the pathway and tie it into Apple Way on that 90-degree angle. That was their direction. So after we got that, we started more communication with the city. We provided the city with the updated TIA, which kind of kicks off more conversation. We provided that to them on September 16th. We had then a meeting, myself and our traffic engineer met with Stephanie Doland and the city's traffic engineer on September 23rd to review that. They had a couple minor comments, and we made a couple just wording revisions to that, and then resubmitted that to the city on September 29th. And we have been awaiting their comment on that. A slight amendment to this is that we received some comment yesterday afternoon at 4:45. And I'll mention that as we get later in the presentation, but the city has responded. I just had not had a time to get it in this presentation on a couple high-level elements. Regarding the Sager Street extension, as you can see, there's no good way of running that straight line down through the creek bottom. So we asked our architects to do a very preliminary sketch of what it could look like had we avoid the floodplain and then tie it into Apple Way. So this is a very preliminary sketch. This is conceptual, rough order of magnitude. And then they also gave the CMAR this sketch and gave them some rough design standards based on what the city said. From that, the CMAR gave us a price to build this of about 2.7 to 3.3 million. Of course, we need to add in a little soft cost for extra design, soils investigation, some other things. That cost could then escalate up to about 3.1 to 4.3 million if Blinn were to pay for this concept of a Sager Street extension. I may mention that in my investigation, trying to figure out the process of this and where Sager Street stands, I did notice that as the city was developing some of their thoroughfare plan, their impact fees that they had looked at what the cost of the Sager Street extension would be. And while it doesn't completely correlate, their plan was not only to extend this, but also to upgrade between Old Mill Creek and Business 290, which is a little bit north of us. That price, I believe, in the estimate was in the range of $5 to $5.7 million. So the city has looked at this. However, I don't believe that they were able to fund those plans because I believe the roadway impact fee did not pass. But I believe they had an estimate on this, but it is not currently in a capital plan for the city, is my understanding. Now, regarding the history of Sager Street, I spoke to you a little bit about this earlier. Some of this history of the Sager Street regarding Blinn starts back in 1997. There were some land acquisitions and swaps that happened in 1997. And in that, Blinn and the Cemetery Association, they granted easements to the city of Brenham to build that Sager Street extension, which would have gone from Old Mill Creek all the way down and tie into Farewell and come out at Prairie Lee. Those easements came with kind of a grandfather clause and said the city needs to build those within 25 years or those easements revert back to the property owners, back to Blinn or the Cemetery Association. In 2019, the city of Brenham released the right-of-way easement on the Cemetery Association's property. So they gave that easement back. There were difficulties, clearly, as you could see, the creek bottom was causing difficulties. But they gave the right-of-way back to the cemetery in 2019. In 2022 was the 25-year grandfather on Blinn's right-of-way. So that right-of-way, based on our understanding of the contracts, and we have looked at title work on it, that has grandfathered, and there should no longer be an easement for that Sager Street extension on Blinn's property. And then in 25, of course, we get the letter from the city or the email from the city where they are saying that for our project, we will need to build the Sager Street extension to Apple Way per their thoroughfare plan. And of course, there are more communications on that. As far as next steps, and this is where I'll get into some of that communication with the city, we need to receive the City of Brenham's official response to the TIA. And I believe that we have most likely received that, although it was received late yesterday, and we're still going through what that email says. Based on the city's response, we need to meet with the City of Brenham to discuss the potential update to the thoroughfare plan. And then, of course, we need to continue to work with the architect and CMAR to develop the design and identify cost savings opportunities. The plan was to come back to the board in November or December with the tentative board update on the TIA and thoroughfare plan. I still believe that is the case. What we heard from the city in the email, and there's a lot of information in it, but two things seem to be fairly clear. The city does not want to abandon the thoroughfare plan. They want to extend Sager Street down to Apple Way. So that's the second time that we've heard from this Economic Development Subcommittee that they want to extend Sager Street. They don't wish to abandon that portion of the thoroughfare plan. Additionally, the city is telling Blinn that they would like Blinn to use Sager Street as the access point for our project. So we need to have more meetings with the city. I think it's certainly, we need to have a follow-up on the city's email. So we will be meeting with the city and having conversations with them on the meaning of that email, on their intentions, as well as talking internally about the impact of that email. So we plan to come back to the board as soon as we have more defined information on what that is. Given that information, the next two topics are clearly tentative. Leighton, did you want to add anything?
Mark, I might jump in on that a little bit. After having looked at that email from the city last night, there are a lot of language about options, what Blinn can do, whether it's Oak Tree Crossing, whether it's Sager Street. They did say that they want to keep the thoroughfare plan, but they had some interesting language in the email about the timing of the construction of Sager Street and not tying it to the approval, the city approvals for this process. They also had language about they are open to the route of Sager Street, that it doesn't necessarily have to go down where the thoroughfare plan says it now. There are other ways we can work with the city on maybe a reroute, because it's clearly a better place and a worse place to build that road in that creek bottom. So the summary of the email from the city, and we're still working with them, we're gonna have a lot of discussions with them about that, is it is not determined the route of Sager Street. It is not determined the timing of building Sager Street, and is not determined who pays for the building of Sager Street. That's all got to be worked out with the city. What the city's email clearly said was there is flexibility here. They want us to use Sager. They're not abandoning the thoroughfare plan, but how we do that, we need to be in discussions with the city about that. So we'll continue to discuss that with the city. I just want to lay that out, that a lot of that's undetermined, those items, but we will keep you updated as we have those discussions with the city.
Mark?
Yes, sir.
Just curious, in earlier thoroughfare plan, when the city that had the route, was it anticipated, or the city anticipated that they would be building that route, the Sager Street extension?
That is my understanding, is that per the original agreement in 1997, the city was to build and complete the Sager Street extension.
They weren't going to ask a private entity or a public school or anybody else to build that street?
Not per the 1997 right-of-way easement. And they had studied it several times. I believe there was a document developed in 2012 or 2014 that the city engineer looked at regarding the pathway. There were 2 or 3 pathways looked at by the city engineer. When Mr. Apple was developing his property, there was talks about working a pathway through Blinn to get over there. Ultimately, the city just didn't pull the trigger on developing that extension of Sager Street. As far as the specificities, the specifics of why they didn't, I can't speak to that.
Mark, excuse me, I'm sorry. The extension goes around our planned building area. So do we come, I know this also be discussed, but we would still have to build a little route up to our parking lot or move that, you know what I'm asking? In other words, we would still have some road building let's say the city picked the whole thing up, I hope, that would be ideal for us. But we would still have some road cost in there, am I correct, or ought to be negotiated?
I think yes, I think it's very early. I don't know enough about what the city is trying to say in their email to say whether they think we're building Sager Street or they're building Sager Street. But even if the city were to build Sager Street, and in the path, I mean, the way the city is writing it, the path can be pretty much anywhere as long as it goes from here to here. So again, I think that's some negotiation, some conversation. But yes, I would anticipate, however that works, Blinn is going to have to pay for the connection to Sager Street, no matter who pays for Sager Street. And that really just depends on our layout and what happens here. So I want to kind of get back to that final slide to mention, clearly there are things are changing, and this project has some complexities that we weren't envisioning whenever we started this complex. So we are tentatively anticipating bringing the board back an update on the design in the budget in winter of 2026, and potentially a GMP in the spring of 2026, but all that is contingent upon conversations with the city. So clearly, previously we had been looking at two projects on the same path, and now we have diverging paths, diverging timelines on our sports complex, and that we have some other obstacles and other conversations we're dealing with, while the Waller project is moving along very well. So any further questions on the sports complex? Or?
I've got a few.
Okay.
So I've got two things on, one is the budget that went from 30 million to 40 million. I don't know how, I understand how that happens on your side, but I don't know how that approval happens on our side without some action or authority given from the board to increase a budget by $10 million. So I think that needs to be sorted out by this board if we're serious about spending an additional $10 million on this project. I see several ways to save money on this project. It's interesting to see what might happen with this Sager discussion. That's obviously going to extend the timeline. So maybe there's a workshop coming up after things are sorted out with the city. We could look at the budget, and we could look at maybe phasing this project. We could look at whatever that timeline includes with the addition of potentially Sager being a thoroughfare developed. One other thing, Mark, I noticed in your presentation, you had done 3 soil samples, and you had obviously the plasticity index and that PVR number related to all 3 of those. Could you go back, and you also show a delta of about $8 million between a conceptual number and a new number of dirt work. Could you go back and, let me ask you first, that conceptual number, was that based off of this location, or was that off of the original master plan location?
That was based off of just a general, we know that we need some roadway, we know that we need some parking, we know that we need some site development. There, it was very rough, very conceptual. We did not know. We talked with our industry experts, and we asked them approximately how much roadway cost developed, and we asked them approximately how much parking lot cost developed, and based on the links and the quantity of parking we anticipated, those were the numbers that we got.
So it was the same person that provided both numbers, the conceptual number and the subsequent
Say that
number?
again.
It was both individuals or firms or contractors that, both people provided the same number, the original conceptual number and the number we're at today for the dirt?
We spoke with multiple entities to try and get an average of the conceptual number. We talked with architects, we talked with contractors. There were multiple.
Any of the firms that we have under contract now involved in those decisions?
We spoke with a multiple of contractors that we talked with before.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with this. We have an architect and we have a construction manager on board. Were they involved at all with both the conceptual number and the number we have today?
I spoke with multiple architects, and we did reach out to some of the architects that were on our interview committee prior
Sorry,
to
I'm getting
interviews.
frustrated. Why aren't we using the firm we've hired for this?
Say that again?
I'm sorry, I'm getting frustrated. Why aren't we using the firm we've hired for these numbers?
Why aren't we using the firm that we've hired?
Is this
I'm trying to
Am I asking a question that can't be answered?
Back up a little bit here. Hold on one second. Let me get up here.
I don't understand.
Let's see, give me 1 second. I think what we're trying to say here, Mr. O'Malley, let me get back here. Okay, here we go. So I think what we're saying here, the conceptual estimate, the date on that was September of 2024. So that was before we hired, I'm sorry for the confusion, that was before we hired any CMAR or architect or anything like that. So that was an internally generated estimate, Mr.
Okay.
O'Malley.
Okay.
And then the schematic is at 8/2025, which is once we had the CMAR and the architect on site. Sorry for that confusion, Mr. O'Malley. I thought that would be.
I'm sorry, that was a confusing question, beyond me. One thing though, Mark, to sum it up on my comments is, and could you go to that slide that shows that 45% number? There you go, on earthwork. You know, you'd mentioned that somebody, don't know who, but at some point there was a number that was calculated that quantified select fill underneath these proposed fields and buildings. With the soil data that you now have that shows basically all of that dirt is select fill, that number goes away. We're over excavating 3 feet and bringing 3 feet back, or 6 feet, or whatever that number might be for a building. It could be more than 3, typically it is. So that number goes away, select fill. So how much of the select fill is in that $8 million delta that might reduce that number down substantially? It might make an opportunity for us to be good neighbors and do a better land plan that would show these fields located at another location.
I do not have that current information because the CMAR and their schematic design did not get that detailed in how much select fill. I just have an earthwork number.
Typically, it's the more expensive of all the variables that go into moving dirt.
And that's what we heard from our earthwork subcontractors, was based on that information that we have very good dirt, that they see an opportunity for good cost savings because of that. So you are correct in that. And I apologize for misunderstanding your question. I was not trying to be evasive. I just didn't understand the direction.
Thank you, Megan, for helping with that. I appreciate it. I think that's all I have right now. I'm sure there'll be more when we get back subsequent reports. Thank you.
Mark, I do have a question, and it kind of goes along that same line. I had the same thought about if the initial number, the higher number, anticipated, cutting out 3 or 4 feet and having to come in with 3 or 4 feet on a football field and a soccer field. That's a ton of select fill.
Yeah.
So, yeah, if that $8 million increased number included that, and we can get rid of a lot of that, that could create a pretty significant savings on that dirt work side. So,
Correct.
Yes.
I think we need more investigation. You could see we only did 3 borings. There were some other markers there that we would anticipate, but that was just to try and get some additional information to try and figure out what we're working with there.
good.
Dr. Krausen?
Yeah, thanks. I don't know anything about dirt, and I'm not going to say anything about that. I do know a lot about ball fields, though. I spent a lot of time at them. Would you mind going back to your design? And I've got several points and also several questions. I'm going to say them all, and I'll let you respond, or whoever wants to respond. But first of all, I appreciate the folks from the HOA being here. I guess this is the 4th time now that you guys have been here. I missed the first one as a funeral, but you've come back with good designs, and in my opinion, maybe a better design than what we have here. Now, Mark, I appreciate what you're doing. You gave an excellent report today, very thorough. You've done a great job for Blinn. I just don't agree with you on this setup here. A couple of things. Number one, I think having one entrance and on that, what is that? Is that Oak Alley? Is that the circle there?
That's Oak Tree Crossing.
Oak Tree Crossing is ridiculous. We're talking about several hundred people, several hundred cars coming into this facility off of Old Mill Creek Road, which is also already a small road that really isn't conducive for that kind of traffic. I don't know what's going to happen with Sager Street. It would be nice if the city built that Sager Street, or if we went half on it or something like that. To me, that just seems the obvious way to get in and out of this thing. The second thing is, I also know a lot about students, and I have to disagree with Ms. Smith there about the fact that the students are going to drive there. Yeah, a lot of them are going to drive there, And I sure would hate to see 100 cars from students driving, making that turn. But most of those students are going to walk. So my question is, again, I'm going to ask some more questions, but how in the heck are our students going to get to this facility right now? The way it's designed, they have to walk down Old Mill Creek Road or cut through the apartments or cut through the ag building, and there's no way for them to get there without doing that. So when we had that thing, or I guess it was the HOA, their design has it closer to the Sager Street area. If we could build some kind of crosswalk or something, I don't think we should have a plan without there being a crosswalk plan for our students to be able to walk from the dorms or from wherever they are and to get into here. I think we're making a huge mistake for our students to make them go down Old Mill Creek Road and go through that turnaround right now. The last thing I'm going to say is this whole design, again, I've been to a lot of ballparks and I've pushed grandma in a wheelchair to a lot of facilities. And the way this thing is designed with that parking lot on the opposite side of your ball fields is ridiculous. Why don't you have the parking lot closer to your fields? It doesn't have to be right next to the, I guess that's the field house area. I just don't understand why it's there instead of on the other side to where you can have more of an opportunity for your family, your kids or whatnot to get in there, which would then be conducive to be the main entrance to be on Sager Street or Apple Street. And finally, I like, somebody brought up the idea of doing it in phases. Why aren't we thinking about doing that? I mean, I don't know if we have $40 million to pour into something like this. Why don't we prioritize what's our most important thing in here? Is it a softball field or is it a soccer field or what is it? Let's look at doing this thing in phases and also include more student activities. When we built the Cruzy Center, we did a survey of what students wanted when we built that Cruzy Center. The number one thing they wanted was a workout facility, which what we built. The second thing was basketball courts. There's no basketball courts for any, there's nothing for the regular students in this design right here. It's all for athletics. And I think that's a mistake. I think we need to have a pickleball court. I think we need to have basketball courts. We need something for our students, and we don't have that right now. Those are my thoughts and questions. Thank you.
I'll do my best to try and recap some of your questions. And I think one of your questions started off with why don't we connect to Sager Street, or why don't we have pedestrian connectivity in that area? That was one of the comments that came out of last month's board workshop. And we are looking at connecting a pathway. You know, there's a bridge that goes across Higgins Branch that gets students from campus. We're looking at connecting that pathway. That was, we heard that we had cleared some land. We cleared that land to investigate what the grading in that area was looking like so that we could connect a pathway. In regards to connections for Sager Street, I believe in one of our very early board presentations, we presented a design that was looking at a connection to Sager Street. And we heard some pretty strong comment that that wasn't desired or that we needed to move because more traffic was going to be coming from other directions. So we looked in another direction if that's a decision of the board, and clearly depending on what the city says, we may need to look at that. But I think clearly some of the next steps are going to be talking with the city about their decisions on Sager Street and the thoroughfare plan. So.
Any other questions at this time? Thank you. I appreciate all of your comments. I appreciate all of your work. I know that you've put a lot into it. Thank you. Okay, next we will go to.
There's more.
Oh, I want to apologize.
Yes. I'm going to go and give us an update on the Waller project as soon as I can get there. So now a brief update on the Waller project. So just a reminder, going to remind the board of a few things. This is some of the development coming into the Waller area. You can see the development in the area. And in fact, we've even highlighted Memorial Herman has bought some land in the Waller area. So lots of good development coming in. And that leads into the update that we received from our demographer, facilities planning. They did some demographics that helps to show that this is a very high growth area, the highest growth area in our service area. And then just to remind the board, our current scope, budget, and schedule, we're at about an 82,000 square foot facility, still on track for $68 million, and still on schedule for that FY 25 through 28, with the contractors wrapping construction up, again, given the GMP is approved at the December board meeting, wrapping up construction in the summer of 2027 so that we could start classes in the fall of 27. Just reminding the board about the master plan that is still in progress. And of course, Dr. Hensley mentioned we've submitted our TIA to TxDOT, so looking forward to their response. All this is in progress. Of course, we're going to focus in on our site plan in regards to the master plan with access off of 2920. Looking at our building with the wet retention ponds, so those will be wet ponds. We're looking at fountains in those, our parking, the two main entryways, as well as our building and the main parking lot just to the north of the building. Of course, we have our first floor plan, which includes the main public areas with student services, disability services, a meeting room, an esports area. We've also got our back of house services for shipping and receiving and mechanical rooms to the upper left. The second floor is mainly for classrooms. We have our lecture classrooms on the right. We have 5 of those on this floor. We have our science labs on the left. We have 4, and that purple area in the middle is our library and learning center with an overlook to the 2-story lobby. The gray area is mechanical space. And then on the third floor, we have 8 more lecture classrooms to the right. We have our administrative suite and our faculty suite. And then we also have more science labs to the left. Just to give you a reminder of the view, so this would be the view from the front of the building from 2920 looking towards the building, and then a view on the interior lobby of the building. Again, we are in design development on this. The architects continue to refine their design, and the construction manager is anticipating getting those design development documents for pricing. So our next steps are to finalize that GMP pricing document, which will happen towards the end of this month. And then the construction manager will be pricing those documents, and we anticipate bringing a guaranteed maximum price to the board at the December board meeting so that we can keep this project moving forward. And with that, I will turn it over for the financing update.
I have a question, Chairwoman Binking.
Yes, Reverend Wells?
Yes, based upon the Waller project and the sports complex project, and I apologize, in the past 12 hours I've been between South Padre, Burnham, Austin Airport, and now I'm traveling to Louisiana. But my question is, if we have the funding and financing, would it be more expensive or less expensive to do the whole project versus doing a project in phases, anticipating possible escalation in material costs and other costs? So that's my question. If we have the financing, is it more advantageous to do the whole project versus phasing the project?
Thank you for the question, Chairman or Board Member Wells. The cost of a project to do it in multiple phases would likely cost more, especially when you consider escalation costs over time. We're hearing that projects will be escalating between 4% and 6% per year over time. So if you delay a project by 2 or 3 years, you're going to see escalation over time.
Thank you.
And Trustee Wells, I think some of your other questions on the financing will be answered in the next part of the presentation. And trustees, I have the honor to introduce Stephen Adams. Of course, we are very familiar with Stephen Adams. Stephen Adams is a chartered financial analyst. He has been really a financial advisor since 1989. He's worked with Blinn for approximately 30 years. And I always ask when I do these introductions, what are some interesting things you can mention? During that time with Blinn, he's guided Blinn through 13 bond issuances. So he has a lot of experience not only with bonds, but also specifically with Blinn. He's all going to give us some information on bonds, on funding, on affordability. He's also going to give some recommendations as well based on the bonding and the financial situation that we have with these projects in mind. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Adams.
Thank you for the kind introduction. Also like to introduce Paul Jason, who's been working with Blinn probably over 15 years. Before he came to work for us, He worked for Standard & Poor's rating agency, which is, of course, very important with regard to any bond issue, having to have a knowledge of the rating agencies and what they're doing. So I think I can hopefully figure out how to use this. So what we're going to do today, since this is a pretty massive undertaking, a new campus, and it's been a while since college has done a new campus, so we're going to talk about the combination of using debt and cash on hands for your project. We talk about your bond ratings and your bond covenants, what revenues that you have versus what revenues that you can use for debt service. There is a difference. We have a plan of finance which is predicated on getting a guaranteed maximum price in December, as was previously mentioned. And we've gone through a pro forma. We've worked a lot with Clint and Vicki and also Leighton to go through all types of pro formas and how we would put this together, how we would structure the debt, how we would present this to rating agencies and bond insurance companies. And also then we'll go through a timeline of events if the board decides to move forward with this project, with this financing. So first of all, Blinn has credit ratings from Standard & Poor's and from Moody's. Standard & Poor's recently upgraded Blinn from A1 to AA-. We're very happy about that. It's a very high rating, and particularly for a community college. Moody's has an A rating on Blinn College. I'm sorry, an A1 rating for Blinn College, which is also a pretty high rating for a revenue bond-based credit rating. Now, all these revenue bond ratings assume that you don't pledge any of your ad valorem property taxes, which a lot of other community colleges do that because they have a larger tax base as a percentage of their debt than what you have. And if you look at S&P, the reason for their upgrade in 2023, they looked at your balance sheet. You had a trend of enrollment, and since COVID, there's been a lot of issues with a lot of community colleges around state. Fortunately, Blinn College has been very strong in its enrollment. So that's been that is the whole key. It's been great for the college and great for your rating. And of course, the management at Blinn is always considered amongst the highest in the industry. There are some concerns that they expressed. You have elevated reliance on students. In other words, you don't have a large assessed valuation like some of these large community colleges in these big counties where they don't have a large degree of students outside their area of their tax base. And you have a moderate debt service burden, and we've known that because you've been growing over the years. We'll show you that it is coming down over time pretty significantly, but you have been a growing district, and when you grow, you have to issue debt. You have 5 outstanding bonds right now. They're all insured, meaning when you sell bonds, in addition to get a rating, we get qualifications for insurance from now. There are 2 bond insurance companies. There were more than that before 2008. And then they compete, and for a price that we pay a one-time fee out of the bond issuance cost, they will agree to pay your bonds to the bondholders if you cannot for any reason. And that gives you a AA rating, and we believe you'll continue to get that. It lowers your cost of debt, and it's based on your financial conditions. And we can see with the cash and the reports that we just saw from Clint that you are in very healthy financial condition, and you've got the ratings that prove that. So talking about the revenues that you have, what you can spend versus what you can't spend on debt service. In 2024, you had operating revenue of just over $135 million. You can use $45 million of that, a little bit more than, or approximately 34% of your operating revenues to pay debt service. The things that are pledged, other than a portion of your tuition, I think $15 of your tuition is pledged, revenues from your other fees and your other revenue generating systems can be pledged as well. So The strength, however, is that tuition. That is the strength of the credit, is the primary revenue source that the rating agencies look at. You do also pledge interest earnings. Looking at your revenues, there are no guarantees from your property taxes on any of the debt that you have outstanding. It is all revenues paid by combined fees and tuition in the revenue systems that we showed on the previous page. You have some covenants that you have to maintain as long as your debt is outstanding. First of all, you have to have a reserve fund of maximum annual debt service. And we have that included in all of our cash flows. It's not part of your cash that's reserved of the $42.5 million. It's cash that's dedicated and can only be used to pay the bonds. You have to set your fees to have a debt service coverage of 1.20%. If it falls below that, in theory, bondholders could mandamus you to raise your tuition and other fees. You currently have over 6 times, so you're not in any danger of that, and that's one of the reasons you have such a high credit rating. Also, in order to sell additional bonds, you have to have your last year's net revenues equal at least 1.2 times your current plus any proposed new debt. And that protects the bondholders from having a debt issue higher than what you could afford within your last year's revenues. So the projects that we've considered in a pro forma that we've done, a multi-year pro forma, are a Brenham Central Plant project of $6.4 million, the Waller campus at $68 million, and the sports complex at $39 million. We had, at the end of 25, unaudited a little more than $87.8 million in cash, and in our pro formas, we are never to go below the $42.5 million that is an operating reserve. Now, this is all predicated on using cash and also generating cash over the next several years in the same amount that we have in the past. We believe that our cash projections that we've used in doing these models are extremely conservative and probably we'll end up with more cash than what we had showing in the results that we show that we were still confident that you can support and pay $55 million in debt, which is at the bottom. And that's just bond proceeds. In addition to that, we do have to also fund that reserve fund that we're talking about and pay cost of issuance. So the actual bond issue would be a little bit more than $55.5 million. And then the cash would be used, and some of it's already been used for those projects. So for example, we've already bought the land for the Waller campus. So the structure that we're using for the $55.5 million construction fund amount is a 30-year bond. It would have at most a 10-year option. We try to shorten the call option when we can get away with it without increasing the interest rate on the bonds. If you shorten it, say, more than 9 or 8 years, you would have to pay a higher interest rate on the bonds. We're estimating an interest rate of 5.25%, which we believe is conservative. We put 50 basis points of cushion. We usually don't put that much, but so much volatility in the financial markets now, we do have quite a bit of cushion in there. The annual payments beginning in 29 would be about $3.8 million. So during the construction of the Waller campus, we have 0 principal payments, only interest. So we give that campus time to get online, have students, generate revenues, and then help pay the debt out of those revenues. We projected with our, what we believe are conservative coverages, conservative cash flows of at least 4.4 times debt service coverage, and that would be increasing over time, primarily because you're paying your debt service over time, and it's going down over time. So, for example, the gray is your existing debt, and you can see that that debt's falling off over time, giving you capacity for new bonds. Now, The green is the existing bonds, and you can see that it starts to increase in 29 after the Waller campus is open. So when you see that increase in 29, we also expect revenues to increase at that time to help pay that debt service. And then again, over time, your debt service continues to fall off so that you, over time, would have capacity for other projects that you chose to do. This is just the principal outstanding over time. You currently have around 90 million, a little bit more. This would bring you up to over 140 million, but you can see that it goes down pretty quickly over time because we are doing level debt service and we've had aggressive payments on your principal over time, and that's one of the things that have helped us be in a position to issue this bonds and maintain now coverage is what we've done in the past, over the past years with our debt. These are the same numbers that you saw on the graph. I know it's a lot of numbers, but there's two things to look at on the far right. The debt service coverage that we said was going to be 4.4 times, so that's the revenues that you can use to pay debt service. We estimate you'll always have at least 4.4 times more of those revenues than debt service. And again, that goes up over time, both as your revenues go up as well as your debt goes down. In terms of your debt compared to your total revenues, the highest that is 7.7%. So 7.7% of your 135 million would have to be used for debt. And again, that continues to go down over time. And that is a static number, so it doesn't even count any increases in your revenues. And we've seen that even this year, and we expect to see that going forward. This would be an example of the sources and uses of funds. We do expect to use cash to contribute to that bond reserve fund. That has been done historically. It gives us flexibility with interest earnings and other things that are dictated by federal tax law. And also, if you ever do pay the debt, we could release that cash to whatever service, to whatever uses that the board wanted. So the total proceeds would be just under $70 million that we need to finance $55 million in projects. That $3.3 million reserve fund, the interest on that is interest that is inured to the district. So you do get all the interest on that reserve fund and should be close to the amount of interest of the debt service on the bonds. So finally, moving forward, we expect your cash balances to never go below 66% in 25 and then 27 as we spend cash for the projects, the cash projects meaning the sports complex. It would go down during that time, but we expect that after that's done, it would continue to build like it's done in the past. And even though there might be a time period where we fall below the medians that we have for an A-rated category, if we can show the rating agencies that we get right back into those medians, that's an acceptable practice for a rating. And then the cash to outstanding debt service, for an A rating by Moody's, we expect that they look at a pretty wide range of 20 to 100%, but we are always going to be within that range of Moody's, of their ratios of similar credits. And with all of these analyses, we expect that we will also qualify for bond insurance and be able to sell these bonds at a AA rating if it makes economic sense to pay their fee and receive their rating. Finally, or now we've put together, this is a detailed timeline. It's a proposed timeline, subject to change, but it's predicated around the December date where we receive the guaranteed maximum price for the Waller campus. If that moves, this schedule could move, but that's currently that's what's driving this calendar. After that, we have to have ratings from Standard & Poor's and Moody's and also get commitments for bond insurance. And then the action item would be at your January 20th board meeting. And at that board meeting, you would authorize us to sell bonds within limits or parameters as required by state law that would require the maximum we could sell, the maximum interest rate, the maximum length of term. And then we would price those bonds around February the 12th, or at least that week. And then the final signing of the certificate to set those interest rates, that would be at your January board meeting, that would be, that responsibility would be given to the position of the chancellor or the CFO to actually sign the actual pricing certificate. And then we would close on March the 18th. We would come back at the February board meeting and tell you the results of the bond sale that you approved at the January board meeting that we sold in between. Finally, we've looked at this analysis extremely carefully. We believe that you can sell these bonds. We don't believe it will have any negative implications on your ratings, on your financial conditions, or on your financial health. And then we see a lot of community colleges. There are those that are growing, and there are those that are not growing. We think it's really important to have, if you have a project like this, to protect your service area against competitors building nearby colleges, which is happening in some of the community colleges that don't have the resources to build. Other ones are moving into their service area, not physically, but right next to it. And we think that this project is really good for Blinn College, both strategically, and we think that it's quite affordable. And we'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. Chair?
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Can we go over the assumptions one more time of the pro formas? I know we've done that before. The assumptions of the pro formas on enrollment, I'm going blank here, on cash flows, things like that. Clint, I think, has got a list of those, but I just want to go over that one more time.
Surely. Trustee Kettler, when administration presented this to Mr. Adams, these were elements that we put in. Right now, we're conservative in our preparation. We can fund with existing operations. As Mr. Adams just said, we've updated this. Debt is never greater than 7.75 of projected revenues that are not growing in our model. The project is revenue generating, will not dip into reserves, we'll have no tuition increase, we'll have no state funding increase, we'll have no enrollment increase, no property tax increase, no interest revenue increase, no auxiliary increase. Any increase in revenues will be extra. There will be no construction escalation cost assumed, savings assumed. We will not have any savings assumed in our construction. In every construction project Blinn has done, we've experienced some kind of savings. Start addressing construction cost escalations. We'll maintain a healthy cash balance or margin of safety. The deferred maintenance is funded. That debt service is included in our assumptions. We're able to utilize the $21 million land investment in Waller as soon as possible. We're able to access Blinn's largest growth area for students, but again, we're assuming no growth in enrollment and no growth in tuition. We will offset every cost increase with either a cut in expenses or an increase in revenues. And that's what the federal government did the last time they had a balanced budget. There was no increase in, if there was an increase in revenue or a decrease in expenses, you couldn't adjust the budget upward. We only assume $10 million to the bottom line. Historically, Blinn, over the last 2 years, has produced $14 million and $16 million. So those were the assumptions that were utilized when we built our models that we gave to Mr. Adams, and he and his staff went through them. And in fact, he was saying I was probably a little bit too conservative, if I'm putting words in your mouth. But anyway, so.
So in other words, Clint, if we do not fill our Waller academic building for a couple of years, if we have a slow enrollment in Waller, which I would anticipate shouldn't be a problem.
It is built into this model, yes, ma'am. And so,
Question for you on the no increase. How many years are we projecting no increase in enrollment, no increase in tuition?
when we built this model out, it was for the next 5 years.
I've got a few, go ahead.
One more question. On the S&P rating, we've got, our cash balance has gone down some. Do we anticipate keeping the same AA minus and A1 ratings at bond issuance time?
We do. They just did that in 2023. We've been in contact with them, and we just expect also that despite the fact that you've spent some cash on projects, your annual cash is still flowing up, and that after you complete any cash project, it's just going to continue to go up. So we don't think there's any rating pressure right now.
One more question on the interest rate. Interest rates are projected to drop. Who knows what's really going to happen? But do you think we can get at a 5 1/4? It's for a tax-free bond. That seems very, very attractive.
Yeah, and that's, remember, we put 50 basis points of cushion, so that would be, you know, if we sold now, it'd be somewhere in the 4.75% range in reality. The one thing that happens when the Federal Reserve Board lowers the interest rate on the short end, it can, and did this last time, cause the long-term rates to go up. And it doesn't always do that, and we just don't have any way of projecting that. So yes, we're showing a very attractive rate now, hoping that we'll sell below 5%. Yes.
I've got a few questions. Thank you, Stephen, for that report. You know, you've, over the last, I'm gonna just start with this one, because this was pretty amazing. I was a little surprised by some of these numbers, honestly. You've done 5 issues in the last 5 or 6, well, the last 10 years, we've done about 5 issues. And I'm assuming that with what you presented today, of those 5, this is probably the best condition we've ever been in to issue debt.
Yes, because of the cash when Clint showed you the 2014 cash compared to what it is now, that's, I've never seen a community college grow that kind of cash. So
Right.
yes, you are in a good condition.
Which just kind of surprised me. You know, in 23, I think you made a similar presentation to this, and at that time we had about 126 million or so in cash, and now we're down to 83. And so I'm trying to correlate the 23 presentation with 126 million in the bank, which I think also reflected a $35 million borrowing cap to maintain that 7% debt ratio. And today we've got 83 million in the bank, and we're showing a 7.71 ratio and borrowing even 20 million more. I don't know how those correlate.
Well, let's start with cash.
Okay.
It's always acceptable to spend cash on one-time capital projects, which is what the college has done. So if your cash had gone down because you weren't generating operating revenues, that would be a problem, and we wouldn't be able to sell the kind of debt we're selling now. The 7.7 is based on, let me find that, 1 year, and that would be the year.
Yeah, it actually goes down from there.
Yeah, 2027, and that's before we have the campus, new campus online.
Right.
And that's with no growth that Glenn was just talking about. We don't have any growth in tuition or anything else that we've been experiencing over the time. So my assumption is you're not going to get to that 7.7.
Yeah, I don't know how those equate.
Mr. O'Malley, if I can ask a clarifying question to Stephen Adams. On that percentage, that's a percentage of your debt service to your total revenue, not your cash, right?
Correct.
That's correct.
Total revenue.
That's correct.
So as our revenues go up, that percentage changes. So it's really not tied to cash, it's
No,
tied to revenue. I just want to make sure I understand
Well,
that.
exactly, but the correlation I was making was, we were showing a 7%. It's not tied, but they're similarly related. You're spending your cash to pay for operating your expenses, so it's certainly related indirectly for sure, that you got to have cash. One other comment I have is, you showed a slide on the projected ratio actually dipping below the AA rating at 41%.
Correct.
In 2027. And I know there's been a lot of discussion about these revenues increasing, and Clint even provided that all these models were done with no revenue increases. And we know we're not going to have any revenue increases. So I don't know how I just still don't understand. I'm not an accountant, don't understand numbers at all. But I don't know how you increase expenses and don't raise new revenue and still maintain a balance in the bank. I don't understand how that works. My home, it does not work that way.
I think the way that we look at it, increasing expenses, agreed. However, capital expenses are viewed differently than your operating expenses. And
until you run out of money in the bank.
Until you run out of money. And you are correct. But we've looked at these models, and we've never gotten below the 42.5 with no growth. And I don't believe we're going to get to that 41% because we already know even this year we're ahead of our 10 million projection on revenues. So I think the reality is by the time we run what I think would be what you really believed would be pro forma, we would still be much closer or even within the A rating categories of Moody's. I believe these cash flows that we're looking at are conservative, and I also believe that we don't believe they're reality. And what we need to show the rating agencies and insurance companies, I know we need for the board very conservative numbers, but we have to show them what we think is really going to happen. So I think we'll even have better numbers than what we're showing you here today.
Can I ask one more question just to follow up? On the interest rate, the 5.25 is very attractive to investors.
Correct.
To the school, of course, we want the lowest interest rate that we could do. I just want to clarify that.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, because these are revenue bonds versus GOs or mud bonds, that type of thing, is that why we bear a little bit higher interest rate, the 4.75 perhaps? I mean, hopefully that's the high end,
absolutely.
but
And also, we hope to get bond insurance. But, and one of the reasons that we think this campus is important, your revenues are 100% dependent on your ability to get students to come here. Whereas if you're a city and you either have taxes or even a water revenue, you've got a monopoly. So yes, that does make this type of bond more risky and have a little bit higher interest rate, even if it's insured, than a tax-backed bond or a water and sewer bond, yes.
one more question on this. This bond issue is for both projects, is that correct? Covers both the sports and the Waller?
No, we are anticipating that this bond will only go to the Waller project, and that the sports center will happen as it happens. And I know I was watching, that's probably going to get delayed a little bit, but that will be funded by cash, the sports project, whenever it comes to fruition in our cash flow models. That's how we're looking at it.
I have one question.
Yes.
Okay. With the state freezing tuition, I was just curious about how does that impact the bond issuance? I know right now it may not, but when we talk about down the line.
Well, obviously that's not a credit positive. However, you have a lot of coverage, you have student growth, and you have other fees other than tuition that you can adjust if necessary.
Okay.
And I think for a growing college like this, it's really less important. I think some of the other community colleges are, that's going to be a problem for them.
Thank you.
Stephen, did you get any enrollment growth projections? Both historical data and projected enrollment growth? So you put, I guess there was none put into the model, but
None in the model,
certainly you've seen what our growth has been over the last 10 years. And did you get head count or full-time equivalents?
We use FTEs for ratings. Yeah, they don't care how many, they just care about FTEs, right? Good question. And
Well, that's kind of my question. I know as much about bonds as I know about dirt, but I do know about students. Have we done any type of surveys or focus groups or anything like that of what the students want there or what we're going to be offering? Are we just building a building with a bunch of programs, or have we thought about what is actually going to go in this building? Along with that, you said that we don't have to have any increased enrollment. So if from my napkin calculations here, to pay for the debt service, we're going to need about 1,000 students a year to be in that campus, or actually a semester. Have we thought about how we're going to get to those? I've asked several meetings now, I haven't got it yet. How many students do we currently have from Waller County attending Blinn? What campuses are they attending? And are we going to steal those students from other campuses? Now, if you look at the data from Lone Star College, and they're in the range of anywhere from 2,000 students to 22,000, but also half of those students are online students. Only 46% are in person. So have we thought about programs? I mean, I think we have a great opportunity here in our technical building that we're building, and I'm 100% behind that. But wouldn't it be good to get information about what the students want before we just throw up a big building? Let's see how we do in the technical arena and then move forward. So my comment.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Krause. And just back up one step. The goal for this building is for a student to be able to obtain an associate's degree at that one location. So that's going to be our ACGM type courses, those very popular courses, but the goal is that student gets an associate's degree at that one location, does not have to
Do
go
we
to
know if students want to do that, though? Sure, that's a great goal for us, but have we asked those students, is that what they want? We already have shown, and Becky showed last time, how we have a great dual credit program in Waller. So that means that's half of their ACGM courses right there. Or are they going to take the other half here, or are they going to go somewhere else? So that's what I'm asking. Have we done any kind of surveys to determine that?
And so what we're looking at is a multi-pronged approach. We're offering our traditional ACGM courses at this building location that gets those students those transfer courses, which is what we do, transfer courses working towards an associate's degree. The flip side of that, and this is why both this building and the technical workforce building are working on the same path. They offer then these specialized technical locations at the CTE, which is literally across the street from this building. That's where you're offering those high demand courses. You got health sciences, you have your traditional HVAC, welding, all those sort of things that are happening there. That is where the combination of both are occurring. So you're offering both your workforce courses and those high demand fields that are involved in that. You're also offering your traditional ACGM courses. So you're catching both types of students that will be coming through here. You've heard from previous presentations that Waller ISD students, roughly 70% of them take a CTE course while in high school. So that's a high interest in that area. So we're setting up where we're getting both types of students, the traditional community college student as well as the workforce student, and attacking it from both angles.
So wouldn't it be make more sense to do just the opposite what we're doing? Spend the $68 million on trying to build this technical facility and not as much on the academic facility? It just doesn't make sense what we're doing. So.
In working with their industry partners in the area, what we're offering at the workforce complex is the high demand workforce areas in that geographical area. the interest we're seeing from employers, the interest we're seeing from not only the employers that we're doing training, but also from targeted workforce numbers and all those sort of things that the Texas Workforce Commission does. That's what we're looking at offering at the Workforce Center. So we're going to be hitting all of those high demand careers, not only that the Workforce Commission says, but also the list that the state does through House Bill 8 funding. That's all being coordinated behind the scenes to make sure what we're offering is in high demand in that geographical area and also corresponds with the high demand occupations for credentials of value and all those sort of things. So it's not an either or, it's a both and.
Are there any other questions or comments? Thank you both. That concludes this presentation. I appreciate your time and effort. Now we'll move to Section 5, the consent items. All items listed in this portion of the agenda are considered to be routine by the Board of Trustees and will be enacted upon in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless a trustee so requests, in which event the item will be removed from consent and considered in discussion and possible action. Trustees receive agenda materials in advance of the meeting to prepare for the business to be conducted. So we're looking at the approval of the minutes of the September 16th, 2025 regular board meeting. Mr. Schubert?
Sorry, no, I was just saying goodbye to Mr. Adams, apologize.
Okay, so
I apologize. Please proceed. Yeah, we're looking for a motion on the consent.
and also the approval of hiring for the position of Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs for Ms. Kirby. Do either of you have anything to add in? No. Okay. I'm looking for a motion for the consent.
So moved.
A second. Did Reverend Wells?
I don't know.
I'm not sure. Oh, I think.
Yes, I did.
Thank you, Reverend Wells. And the second has now come from Diane Kettler. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, same sign?
Aye.
I think he was, since he made the motion, I believe that is he's voting aye. Okay. And all items are approved in the consent. Next, we move to discussion and possible action items, but we have none, and we have no executive session. So now I need a motion for adjournment. Dr. Krausen? Second from Mr. O'Malley. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. It is 12:07 p.m. Thank you.